comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Dollar, dollar.
Hey, do you like our content here on Mountaineer Rants? If you do us a favor. Down below, put a comment in there. We would love to hear what you're thinking, and especially when we give our opinions about stuff. Secondly, hit the like and subscribe. That way that we can get out to more people, we can get more opinions, and we can have more debates. But you won't know if the new videos are coming out unless you hit the notification bell. So hit that bell, and that way it'll alert you. Like, subscribe, notification, and leave us a comment. Thank you. Hey, welcome back to Mountaineer Rants. I'm Terry. This is Paul. We are here today to cover another subject. We're good to see you all, and we're glad to be on. Today we're going to be covering something that may not be quite as fun as some of the other subjects we tackle, but this is about
ranting
NIL.
about money, man.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll give you that.
Bryce Young is
money.
the Alabama quarterback. Bryce Young is a Heisman Trophy candidate. $3.2 million to college football. C.J. Stroud, the Ohio State Buckeyes. How does it affect Ohio State?
Yes, that's what the prime director.
$2.5 million in NIL valuation. The Texas A&M school players average $85,000 a year. Michigan, they average $65,000 a year. Oklahoma, $64,000 a year. Georgia, $56,000 a year. Alabama, $52,000 a year.
Well, I remember growing up, when I grew up, when they were talking about recruiting ball players and getting them to come to play at the school, there was always signs and talk of violations and money being slipped under the table. No, it doesn't happen anymore. It's not slipped under the table. It's just flat out being paid. That's where we are. I don't like it personally, but that's where we are.
There's a lot of technical stuff to it, but that's true. And we don't know what's coming either. Yes. Pensions, trades, agents, it's in a state of flux. We'll give you a little bit of background. So what happened? The NCAA was the voluntary corporation that took charge of what was amateur and what wasn't. Right. They'd let you get a scholarship, you were still an amateur. They'd let you get certain educational benefits, you were still an amateur. If you got an agent, if you were paid, then they said you were not an amateur and you couldn't play college sports anymore. Well, they were regularly challenged. Right. They were challenged by people that said they've gotten too big. They were challenged by the O'Bannon brothers.
They are big, and they were big, and they make big money. Forgive me, but the O'Bannon brothers were probably the most popular one of those that got challenged, that's for sure. The basketball players from UCLA.
They sued and said that it wasn't fair that the NCAA should be able to benefit from their name, image, and likeness on video games and other places, and they weren't allowed to benefit from it. And they were successful. A judge ordered $44 million awarded to their attorneys in a class action suit. Then they had other challenges. They had challenges against them because the NCAA was saying how many games a team could play in a season, and that was challenged. Well, if you're regulated by competition, if your supermarket is selling a soft drink for $15, the next supermarket only sells it for $3, the first one goes out of business. That's competition regulates it. But if there's only one supermarket, if there's only one college sports, then that's a monopoly. Right. A monopoly falls under the Sherman Antitrust Act and other laws. And if you don't have an exemption, you're not allowed to do certain things as a monopoly. Well, the NCAA, when they got sued, would try and argue that they were exempt from the Sherman laws, and every time they got away with something, they figured that meant they could do anything they weren't stopped from doing.
You know, you go back to the video game thing. There was a video game that I play, that I still play to this day. It's NCAA Football 14. It was the last year that they made it. Well, the NCAA got money from that because all the schools, all the stadiums are all in there, the mascots, all that stuff. And then there would be a player on that team, and it would be just like the player who plays for you. He would be the same size, basically the same attribute, speed, but he would be called a different name. Those players, I believe, did deserve something from that. But as a result of that, EA Sports, which put the game out, stopped doing it. Now they are supposed to do it again, it was one of the best video games I have ever played. But it's a shame because those guys were playing, representing themselves basically on this game, but they weren't called their name. But the schools were making money off of it.
And the editorial comment would be, how is it, what does that have to do with keeping the player an amateur?
It's true.
Why is it that these NCAA and the schools can make money off of the kid's image, but the kid isn't allowed to?
It's not right.
And the answer is they should be allowed to. Well, anyway, the case that came along then in 2021 was NCAA versus Alston. It had to do with the NCAA's regulations on educational benefits, where the athlete would be given certain things related to its education, whether that was tuition, a computer, books, etc. And the trial court said, your regulations are way too broad. You're not really protecting their amateur status. You've done way too much. And it issued an injunction against the NCAA, said you can't enforce those. The NCAA appealed it and went up to the Supreme Court. But the injunction specifically said, if you lighten these things up and tailor your restrictions just to protect the amateur status, we won't have a problem with it. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and in a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court said that the lower court applied the proper tests, that the NCAA was in violation of the Antitrust Act in the overly broad rulings, and that unless they got an exemption from Congress to get out of the Antitrust Act, their regulations were not enforceable. So the Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision, let the injunction stand.
So once again, the NCAA, in my opinion, got too big for their britches, so to speak. They weren't being fair. They wanted to make all the money. They didn't want to do anything for the people or the players. This is my side of it, anyway, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I think they did it to themselves. They didn't. Yeah. They didn't need to do that. They could have, if they'd have loosened up a little bit, it wouldn't have gone up as high. Exactly. Now, eventually, they were going to get curtailed. The irony here is, these were about education-related benefits. Right. They weren't really about NIL, name, image, and likeness, which is the labor part of the Sherman Antitrust Act. But the court, and one of the concurring opinions in the decision, said this is just about the education benefits. It's a narrow ruling. But the court, in listening to the argument, made it real clear that the NCAA should not be allowed to go ahead and stop you from making money off of your name, image, and likeness unless they get an exemption from the antitrust law, and they didn't have that exemption. So where does that leave us? Well, it means that who can control now? Who's in charge? Well, if the NCAA can't call the shots,
nobody.
Who can control it? The player obviously can control what he does. The school could control what he does. The conference could control what he does. The state law could control what he does. And the federal people could control what he does, but not the NCAA under the antitrust law. Well, why wouldn't the states or the conferences control it? Who wants to outlaw NIL in the SEC if the Big Ten's allowing it?
Again, it's a competition, like you say. Right. That will do it. If I can go play for an SEC school and make $50,000, and the Big Ten, or even if they curtailed it in some way and said, well, we're going to put a cap on it in the Big Ten because we don't want to get it out of hand, well, I'll just go out of there and go to another conference.
It means the other conference has better competition. It means the good players will move out of your school or your conference or your state. So everybody is bumping it. Now, 30-some states have passed NIL laws. The states can do it for their state, and they're largely modeled after the California Fair Pay to Play Act, and they follow some of the same things, but not all the states have done that, and some of them vary. For example, normally what happens is a third party will create a trust, some kind of a corporation, that's not affiliated with the school.
Right. Cannot be.
It's not supposed to by most of the rulings, because then you might lose your amateur status. If you're paid by the school to play for the school, you lose your amateur status. So that it's not affiliated with the school, and those trusts then take in money and pay it out to the athletes. Well, what's happened? Texas has a Clark Field Collective. It has a $10 million fund to pay the Longhorn athletes, and their offensive linemen on the Texas school get $50,000 a year as part of their compensation, selling their likeness, image, and name.
Not a bad deal.
BYU has something similar. They expand theirs to their walk-ons, so they got a deeper bench than some of the others.
Basically, even if you walk on at BYU, you're still going to get now you're not going to get the tuition and the room and board and all that, and then something on top of it like the other players. But you're going to get money to where you'll have money to pay for room and board and pay for your tuition and pay for your books. And it's like so that you pretty much eliminated the whole thing called a walk-on anymore at BYU.
So what's that do to scholarship limits?
There is no such thing.
You don't need the school scholarship if the NIL is going to pay for all your fees. You're gone there anyway as a walk-on. So we're just talking about player limits now. Otherwise, if somebody gets hurt, you're already in the school.
Right.
Colorado has Maxim sports betting that's offered the female athletes in Colorado to come and promote Maxim sports bettings. Now, a lot of states, even in NIL, they have rules or regulations, the schools or otherwise, that says you can't promote certain things.
That's really concerning to me because you start getting the gamblers involved, then you got run the whole gamut of people throwing games, shaving points, stuff like that. That one bugs me more than anything. But that's the way where we're going.
Colorado and some states have legalized marijuana or legalized drugs.
I would think of Ohio State, Art Schleister. Remember you had talking to you, Steve. You probably know who Art Schleister is. Moving on.
Virginia Tech has something clever. They have a barbecue restaurant that gives their linemen free barbecue every Tuesday.
That's not a bad deal.
And in return, the kids show up to eat the barbecue, and fans show up to go to the restaurant. So
that's a pretty cool. That's ingenious. I like that. I think that's a good way.
Name, image, and likeness. Yeah. But we don't know. Are we going to have agents? Are we going to have pensions? Are we going to have trades? Are we going to have unions? We've got a bill in Congress. We've talked about that. If the schools could regulate it, the states could regulate it, but really people are looking to Congress. I don't anticipate them doing something. There's a couple of bills pending right now.
Anyway, really. Why would they do anything with this? They don't really much. They don't want to get involved, and I can't blame them if they would not wanting to get involved. But we'll see. We'll see.
Somebody upset.
Yeah.
So
there's a vote.
So West Virginia doesn't have an NIL law, but West Virginia University has a policy. Their policy says if you're going to make money from name, image, and likeness, you have to report it to the university, and you have to follow certain guidelines. And the policy and the NIL can't be contingent upon WVU enrollment.
Right.
It can't be contingent upon you hitting home runs or scoring touchdowns or those kinds of things.
Although I don't know how they're going to enforce that. It's just not going to be in the agreement or whatever. But you got to figure, somebody scores 15 touchdowns, they might get a few extra bucks come from the trust.
Exactly.
How are they going to enforce it?
Anyway, enforcement's the whole next. That's the part that makes it the Wild West.
Yeah.
But they say it has to have a quid pro quo. Now, normally what these kids do is they allow their name, their image, and their likeness to be used. Normally they're required to meet and greet, do something on social media, maybe autograph a few things. But West Virginia University says you can't get money for doing nothing. You have to do something, a quid pro quo. And West Virginia says you can't be endorsing illegal products, alcohol, tobacco, gambling, banned substances, lethal weapons, adult entertainment, or those kinds of things that are otherwise in violation of West Virginia sponsorships. You can't use West Virginia logo if you're in the West Virginia NIL, and you can't use West Virginia facilities as part of your promo. Although you can say that you're a West Virginia student if you are one.
And might take away your amateur status. I'm sorry, I'm being silly, but where does this leave us as a small school like West Virginia, or in the overall? It is the Wild West. There's nobody governing it. There's nobody in charge of it. There's nobody capping it. It means this simply: the schools that have more money will make more money and will be able to pay players more money, so they will constantly be the better teams. It's just that simple. That's the way I see it.
Let's rant a little bit about enforcement, because the NCAA didn't do a very good job of enforcing their things. You can't really, I mean, they would hire your high school football coach to get you to come to their school, and the NCAA didn't know what to do about that.
Or else they would say they're going to put sanctions on people, and then nothing would ever really happen. They said, oh, they might get the death penalty. What was it? SMU got the death penalty for college football. Remember, way back in the day, if you remember, if you're that old, they still got a team, though. How is that? It wasn't really a death penalty.
Only like a year or so, yeah. And we had a major scandal just a few years back over basketball down in Louisville, and nobody heard anything more about that. That's all went away. They had U.S. attorneys looking into it and everything. There's really no teeth in it. And most of the sanctions for a violation under NCAA were self-reported and self-suggested sanctions. The school would say, well, we'll give up 3 scholarships and our bowl or whatever it is, and they
for half a day in January, and well, see, they complied with all of their self-imposed sanction. Oh yeah, woof, easy.
But let's talk about the enforcement again. Suppose I've got a car dealership in Louisiana, and I want an LSU player to go to LSU. And so I say, I'm going to hire you, and all you have to do is put your banner up in front of my place, and so people think you like my car dealership, and for that I'm going to write you a check. How in the world can the NCAA stop that?
They can't.
And if the NCAA could stop that, or the school could stop that, what stops that car dealership from hiring your mother, or hiring your neighbor, or a friend for the same thing? So if they want to get money into the hands of the players, the stinkers can get the money. It's going to happen. It happened
before this anyway. It was just under the table. It was underhanded, and it was never caught. Now we've just gone above board. But now there's, again, they've never done it the right way ever. They didn't enforce it when you couldn't do it. Then now they can't do anything about it at all when it's legal. It's the Wild West now. And the biggest gun, the biggest dollar.
Millions of dollars are on the line. People will. They say the straight and narrow path has most of its wear and tear along the edges. Whenever there's something that's that much money involved, people are going to be nibbling on the edges. Absolutely. And there's millions involved here. So I don't know how you enforce the rules as they are now. How do you make sure that the contract between that car dealership and that player is not contingent upon them going to LSU? After all, the dealer can say, I fired you if you don't go to LSU. How do you keep that car dealership from trading your contract to the guy at South Carolina?
And that's scary right there too. That's the kind of thing that this could open up to.
How do you keep the player from saying, well, I don't just want money, I want a pension.
Yeah.
I want a retirement plan.
401k. Yeah.
I want insurance, so if I get hurt, I still get paid.
Yes. That's coming. It's coming.
How can you possibly regulate all of that? And who would regulate it? Well, I think the only way it might get regulated is at the federal level, but we'll see. We'll see where it goes. Right now, if you're interested, West Virginia does have a trust. It's called the WVU Country Roads Trust. We endorse it. They say 100% of the contributions go to the players. West Virginia's players are averaging about $30,000 per year on our latest stuff. The athletic department and the staff are barred from creating NIL or facilitating them. So this Country Roads Trust is independent from the MAC and it's independent from the university. But it deals with all the athletes, girls and boys, the rifle, track, basketball, football, etc.
And MAC means Mountaineer Athletic Club, just in case you didn't know. So but it can't. It's got to be separate from the university completely. It's Country Roads Trust. Again, we endorse it. I don't like that it's come to this, but that's
where we are, and you have to have it to compete, or otherwise you lose a player that.
We'll never compete.
If Baylor offers them more money or Texas offers them money and they have trouble. All the way back to the days of Don Nayland, he used to lament that a kid needs a few bucks to buy a pizza now and then and wasn't allowed to work for it under NCAA rules. So if you're interested in the Country Roads Trust, the featured plan they push is $30 a month that you give to the trust. It goes to the athletes. And for that, you get decals and lanyards. You get an invitation to at least 2 events annually. You get a monthly raffle on signed items, autographed items. You get access to football tailgate parties, and you get at least one autographed item and discounts from their purchase from the country store. But you don't have to give them $30 a month. You can give as little as $6.99 a month, or a one-time contribution, and it goes to the athletes. If you donate more, the big donors get a lot of stuff from this third party, not from the university.
Right.
So big donors of $6,000 a year, $500 a month, they get all of what I just mentioned, plus they get 3 player-signed items, 2 football suite invites a year, members-only auctions, the ability to request a free personalized video, access to football and basketball tickets. I'm not sure what that means, but I do know that they get invited as well to an exclusive dinner with the coaches and players, along with a 25% discount. If your company wants to do it, if you are that car dealership and you're a corporate sponsor, they'll put your logo on the website. They'll blast your email to their membership database. They'll give you access to hospitality events, activation with athletes, invites to a football suite with 4 game tickets, social media posts, and private dinners with selected athletes and the coaches. So, and if you don't want to do any of that, but you want to drink to the Mountaineers, Country Roads Trust Lager is a beer that they have introduced. I don't know how that works. You're not supposed to endorse alcohol products, and yet it's an alcohol product that's going to help them. If you drink Country Roads Trust Lager, a portion of the proceeds goes to Country Roads Trust and goes to the athletes.
I wonder if that's good as Kirchhoff Ale. I don't know. Kirchhoff Ale from Three Guys.
I'll drink to that.
All it's saying is basically, listen, we're Mountaineers. We've been there. We're loyal. There's a big bunch of us out on the media, on social media out there presence. If you haven't looked, we don't have a lot of money in the state, so it's not like some of these big schools and that have a whole lot of money. If we want to stay competitive, we're going to have to give more money, because that's the wave of the future. I don't like it.
We don't want to lose players because they can make another $20,000 or $30,000 a year playing for Maryland or playing for a rival company. Right. So this is one way to support them. It's legal. At least until this thing shakes out.
Yeah. Who knows what tomorrow will bring, but that's where we are right now. So.
Drink Country Roads Trust Lager. We'll see about putting the link to the Country Roads Trust in below, or look it up. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.